My name is Amanda Vikramasinghe. I'm currently a visiting faculty here at GSEP and been part of the Pepperdine community for many years in various capacities. So really excited to be part of this exchange this morning. And even more so, I'm excited to introduce our keynote speaker, who is a dear friend and colleague. So without any further ado, let's meet Dr. Lola. Lola Gershfeld is the CEO of EMC Leaders and a developer of the emotional connection process, also known as EMC. It's an attachment-based approach to conflict resolution, improving team dynamics, work relationships, and above all, company culture. As we all know, we live in a very exciting time today with the advances and emergence of technology, social media, and research in neuroscience. It's really important that we understand how our brain thinks, our relationships, and of course, our world around us. So researchers have proposed that our brains are adaptable, of course, given the current context and situations. We're hardwired for different types of connections. And that's why Dr. Lola's research with us today will certainly share some insights as to how we use new science of emotional connection and how it applies to shaping the most important relationships and interactions, both in our personal and professional lives. What we understand, we can shape. She will be exploring the underlying dynamics of interaction from an evidence standpoint and attachment-based perspective, and focus not only on helping people be more engaged, productive, and collaborative, but also creating that psychological safety and trust. She's been doing this for 39 years, so she's certainly the expert, and she was certainly instrumental in building several international electronic manufacturing companies, serving on multiple private boards and working as a CFO and as an HR manager. And the list just keeps going on and on. But in the interest of time, I will stop there with all of her accolades. She's also the co-author of an emotional connection book that was recently and soon to be published, called The Culture of Connection. And of course, she's a Pepperdine alumna, and we're very excited to have her here. On a personal note, I've been working with her for quite some time now. I serve on her board and really seen the essence of this concept of emotional connection really come to life, both professionally and personally. So I'm so excited that she's here with us today to share her valuable expertise. So let's welcome her.
Thank you. So nice to be here with you. I'm honored. And for you being here, it's a huge gift to me and everyone who is here today. My heart is really touched by Pepperdine community, and I consider Pepperdine as my home. It really opened the door for me and changed my life when I got my master's degree there some 20 years ago. But here we are today, and I want you to know that you spending time here today, making time to learn something incredible, is really touches my heart. And knowing that you want to continue to grow and develop in yourself and in your relationships, in your interactions, and the people that you impact is a huge gift to them. I know that you know a lot about interactions. You've been using it, studying it, understanding it. So my hope today is to give you a sense of how interactions shift from being positive, specifically in the workplace, because I love seeing people connect in the workplace, because I struggled in the workplace, didn't understand why such an intelligent and highly smart people can't get along with each other. And so I made a mission to myself, to find the answer. And so I want to share with you how you can use the attachment framework and emotional connection to understand what happens in your relationships, what happens in your interactions. How do you get away from having these positive relationships and connections? And what you need to make them right, to get that connection back in a way that is repeatable and reliable in the sense that you know what the results could be. For me, it's like a regular scheduled flight. You know, you get on a plane, you know what the destination is. The destination is always connection. You know how to fly the plane. You know how to deal with turbulence. You know how to get people back to that place where they feel safe and secure with each other. I mean, who would not want to do that, right? Who would not want to have that roadmap? I certainly, my life could have been so much more easier if I knew that. Using this EMC process, I've used it with 800 cases. And it gives me this confidence every time I go work with the team or in the organization or with individuals. I know exactly how to get them to there. So that gives me a lot of freedom. It gives me a lot of confidence. And it also changed myself. It has changed my relationship. It has changed my interactions with everyone who I have relationships with, whether it is my colleagues, my peers, my family. So is it work? Yes, it's going to be work. Is it something that you have to constantly practice? Yes, all the time. But it's something that builds on each other. So that building one relationship starts to build a group, and building a group starts to build a larger group to create that dynamic, that positive energy that we all want in our lives, in our teams, in our workplace. Now, sometimes we got to start in a bad place where there's maybe conflict and things are a little broken. But sometimes we start in a place where things aren't obviously broken, but maybe underneath there's a longing, right? There's a longing for that connection. And we know that it could be better. So in either one of these scenarios, what we do at EMC Leaders is we help individuals and teams to go through that and get them to a place where they can start to have these kinds of conversations with each other that is based on their vulnerabilities, where they can be emotionally connected with each other. And then from there, start to build and nurture their relationships. That sounds amazing to me personally, and I always get excited about this. I never, ever get tired of talking about emotional connection because I never realized how powerful emotions are until I learned how to work with emotions, until I started to learn what drives our interactions. So it's very exciting for me to share this with you. I wrote this book with my colleague, Emotional Connection, the EMC Strategy, a couple of years ago, because I wanted people to know that they don't have to be stuck in that disconnectional world. They don't have to be stuck in this negative interactions that happen to have either in their relationships, in their work relationships, and that they can learn the roadmap that gets them back to connection. It has a case study. I love the team that is there. It's a team that we're not in conflict, but we're really not being effective together. They were afraid to say things to each other. The meetings would be long and draining. We can all relate to those. And they were not sure what was causing that. So the book kind of takes you through their discovery, through their stages of applying the emotional connection process, the steps and the stages that I'll share it with you, and how they evolved in building and nurturing their relationship, how they have become more productive, how they've grown with each other, and how their performance improved. And I remember sitting in one of their meetings, and one of the gentlemen said, You know, Lola, when things happen at work, I can go and tell my wife about it, but it's nothing compares to the moment and to the experience that I can share with my peer, because they get what I'm going through. And after they get what I'm going through, and I can turn to them and I can share it with them, our relationship gets so much stronger. We feel like we are one. And you know, when I tell you this, I have goosebumps because it feels so good to feel that way. Don't we all want to feel that way with either in our teams, in our work, in our relationships? So I want you to know that it's going to take work. It's going to take a lot of practice. But when you get there, you feel so good. It's worth all the effort. So let's start with just talking about why disconnections are terrible for us. So one of the reasons disconnections are so damaging for people at work is that it interferes with our social engagement system. I'm going to say that again. It interferes with our social engagement system. It interferes with our ability to bond with other people, to turn to other people and get that source of comfort and support we all need when we feel stressed, when we feel scared, when we feel uncertain about ourselves, when we make a mistake, when we feel overwhelmed, because we are fragile species. Have you noticed we don't have claws? Our teeth are quite small, right? Basically, in terms of being the dominant species on this planet, how did we do that? We did it by reading the messages on each other's faces, by creating a social brain that allowed us to tune into each other and cooperate and come together in tribes and families and form a special bond with people who care for us. And we know that they will be there when we need them. That's how we did it. That's why we're a dominant species on this planet. You know, there's an old idea that Charles Darwin talked about survival of the fittest. He actually never used that phrase. That was one of his commentators, in fact. If you read Darwinian theory, what Charles Darwin talked about and what all the new science talks about in neuroscience and in psychology and in attachment is that survival goes to the most nurtured. Survival goes to those who can connect with other people and use that connection as a resource. Okay, survival goes to those who can connect with other people and use that connection as a resource. So one of the dreadful things about disconnection is it isolates us. And we cannot live and we cannot thrive in isolation. Just going to stop here for a second and just think about it, because that is incredibly powerful to think about. One of the dreadful things about disconnection is that it isolates us, and we cannot thrive in isolation. Hey, I think that's really everything I wanted to say. I'll talk about the Argentine tango now. You know, my other obsession in life, apart from my family and piano, I love playing the piano, I love spending time with my family, is Argentine tango. If anybody seen Argentine tango, and you know the difference between the amateurs and the professional dancers is that the professional dancers, if you watch them, they really are in tune with each other. They really are in tune with how they're listening to that music. So I use music and dance as a metaphor a lot, because if you really think about interactions, about relationships, it's like a dance, and emotion is the music. And so Argentine tango is very, you kind of like come up with it as it goes. It's not like a set of steps that you learn. I mean, there are foundational steps that you learn and then you build on it. The same thing with interactions. You don't know what the other person is going to say. You don't know how the other person is going to respond. You don't know what's going to come up for you. So if you think of interaction, every time you interact with somebody, you are inviting them to the dance floor. You are listening to the music, and emotion is what the music is going to help you to really understand how you interact with each other. So disconnections isolate us. It cuts us off from the greatest resource we have, which is connection with other people. So working with someone you depend on and not being able to reach them is amazingly, amazingly distressing for us. It's like being hungry in a room and living in that room where there's a beautiful meal laid out for you, but there's glass between you and the meal. Your longing for connection is there. It's wired in. You can't get rid of that. It's in your bones, but you can't connect because you're too terrified. So you're isolated. I remember being on this board some, I don't know, 25, 30 years ago. And we had very, very highly sophisticated people on that board. And I could never, it was really boggling for me to understand what is going on. And when I would get disconnected and feel so alone, I would go into my room, into my office, sit looking at the paper and thinking to myself, I know how to do that, but my brain is not working. So it's very difficult for us when we get disconnected. So I want you to think about your own experience. When you feel disconnected, what happens to you? What are some of the emotions you experience? What do you notice about yourself? It's hard for me to create. It's hard for me to engage. It's hard for me to collaborate with people. It just like drops me into that hole. Anybody seen that video, Brene Brown, sympathy versus empathy, where the fox kind of just drops in the dark hole? It's dark, it's alone. And the fox, there's I think a goat or something out on the top of that hole says, oh, I see it's dark out there. Do you want a sandwich? No, we want somebody to climb down the hole with us and sit with us. So I want you to think about your own experience when you feel disconnected. What happens to you? How do you feel? What do you notice about yourself? Take a moment. Share it in the chat. Lonely, right? Feel very lonely, definitely. I'm disappointed. Thank you. Misunderstood. Feeling anxious, absolutely. Don't we all feel anxious, isolated, feel awkward? I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. I can't relate really to anything that is happening. I feel so disconnected. All of these experiences empty, so true, unsettling. Look at these words, how hard they are for us, right? Disconnection can lead to a lens of negativity that colors everything else. So true. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. So what we learn from attachment theory and what we learn from the science of understanding of human behavior is that when we work together at work, we depend on each other. And this dependency creates an attachment and turns on our bonding needs. So emotional connection is the glue that holds the bond together. That bond is the key to our growth, to our development, to our thriving. Without the bond, we exist. We don't thrive. We just exist, like a survival. We go from day to day, just getting to work, just getting minimum. when we're connected, we blossom. We start to experience things that we have never experienced before. We start to create things and take risks. And suddenly, wow, you see like, wow, I didn't know I have this talent. I had no idea that I could write a book. Wow, that's incredible. So you start to learn about yourself, amazing things that you have never experienced. So what all the science tells us is that when we lose that connection with people that we depend on, and I'm going to talk about mostly work relationships, but it also applies to personal. Everything I'm going to say applies to personal here as well. So what all the science tells us is that when we lose our connection, or when we are unsure of that connection, there's a part of our brain that goes into panic. And this isn't about how strong you are or how mature you are. It's about the fact that you have a mammalian brain. And what your mammalian brain tells you is that it is not safe. It is dangerous to be by yourself, to be all alone. It's dangerous for you. So the brain is kind of like a sensor for you, a sensing, a radar for you. And anytime that you feel unsafe, your environment changes, the brain kicks in and says, uh-oh, there's a danger place for you. And that is one of the dangerous places is when you lose connection. So it is not about how strong you are or how immature you are. It is about the fact that you have a mammalian brain. So a lot of behaviors that we see in stress situations where people say, oh, this person doesn't, is being difficult, or they don't have communication skills, or they have a personality disorder. We look at it through the lens of this new science, of this attachment lens. And we say, no, this person is actually terrified. They are in a terrible attachment panic, and they have no idea how to deal with it. So they deal with it perhaps by getting angry, right? Which unfortunately pushes people away. Or they deal with it by shutting down and withdrawing, which also pushes people away. The trouble is that the strategies we use to get the connection back often end up making us feel more isolated and alone, keeping the distance growing. So I want you to think about that and understand that all of this disconnections and trying to reconnect is because we're using ineffective strategies. All of the negative interactions occur because we are not understanding what is happening with us emotionally. Emotions is what really drives everything. And when we are able to slow things down, to recognize our emotions, to have the language for emotions, to be emotionally responsive to each other, to understand the music that is playing, now you're able to reach for each other, to be there for each other. Then you're not alone in that dark place. And now everything changes when you're not alone. You can deal with stress better. You can deal with challenges better. You can come up with new ideas. You create that social engagement system again, because we are bonding mammals. We need connection. It's ingrained in our bones, like we need oxygen. So everything we do in the emotional connection process is we trying to get that connection back. We're trying to create that connection, give ability and tools to people how to consciously make that connection into a healing arena where people can heal their relationship injuries, relationship wounds. Maybe wounds is a kind of a medical term, but it is true. When we feel hurt, we are wounded. What is a natural place to heal wounds? Trauma comes from the Latin word to wound. What is a natural place to heal wounds? It is in the presence of people who care about you. And we all know that. I don't have to tell you that. You know that in your bones. That was what's wired in our brain the day we were born. So this is the music that plays in our nervous system. This is the music that nervous system starts to dance to. This is the music that starts to structure the way we interact with each other. This is the music that keeps us longing for connection with people we depend on. So if you experience negative interactions, if you notice negative interactions in your workplace, that gives you the clue that people are trying to get their connection back. They're longing for connection, they're fighting for connection, they're protesting the disconnection, and they're trying to get their connection back. The negative interactions is the sign that there's emotional disconnection. So like, if you think about conflict, conflict is just the inflammation. The virus is emotional disconnection. So the whole focus is to help to understand the impact people have on each other, the impact you have on your peers, on your coworkers, and how much you need each other in order to create positive interaction, in order for you to continue to nurture your relationships and connection. So the step one is to understand the power of emotions. This is step one, the power of emotions. So emotion comes from the Latin word immovere, means to move. So emotion moves us to action, but it's fast. It's supposed to be fast because it saves our lives. So think of emotion as a source of information that tells you what's happening in your environment. It monitors your safety in relations to your attachment needs. And what are your attachment needs? Your attachment needs is to feel safe. Number one, emotionally safe. What does it mean, emotionally safe? That means that the people that work around you, they care about you. They value you. You matter to them. You get that sense that I matter to the people I work with. It means that they will be there when you need them. They will not turn away from you. That is sign of safety, that you can reach out for them, that you can tell them when you make a mistake, when you feel embarrassed. You can tell that to them. You can share that. You can reach out and say, hey, I need reassurance. I made this presentation. I felt so embarrassed. I feel so stressed. I feel like I really did a bad job. I need reassurance for you to tell me that I did a good job. That everything was okay, right? We need all these things from each other. And that's what attachment needs. That is what attachment teaches us. We have these attachment needs. And when the people respond to us and meet that attachment needs, we feel safe. We get stronger. We now can go out and do another presentation, right? We can go out in the world and fight all the challenges that we need because we know the person will be there for us. In fact, there's a study that was shown that young career women go faster in their careers and their progress and their development when they know they have a secure relationship with their boss and their peers. They go faster and develop that growth way. In terms of growth and development, they blossom. So that means then when we are activated by emotions, we need to understand how to slow things down, how to tune into each other, how to tune into our own emotions in our trigger, what's happening for us. And then we need to be able to clearly communicate that to the other person on what is it that we need to feel safe, to feel secure, to feel balanced. That's very important. That is a big job to do, to slow it down, to tune into myself, to turn to the other person, not be terrified that they will suddenly not be there for you. That's very scary. But as you practice, as you continue to understand how to work with emotions, it becomes much easier to do. And especially when everybody learns this language of emotions, everyone knows what's happening, and everybody starts to be open to learning about each other's sensitive spots, each other's raw spots, and know how to be there for each other. Oh my gosh, now it becomes a community of connection. That is amazing. So let me tell you about the brain and how important that is. When the amygdala right here, the 8 point is, that's the amygdala, the emotional part of our brain. When the amygdala is activated by our emotions, which tells us there's a trigger, there's a change in our environment, something is happening with our safety, it actually hijacks the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex, where all the skills are stored, where all the thoughts are stored, decisions are made, that is happening in our prefrontal cortex. The amygdala, which is in the back, that's our emotional brain. That's senses, like a radar. You know, are you there for me? Do I matter to you? Will you be there when I need you? And if the answer is no, or maybe, boom, in that moment, that's when amygdala is activated, and it hijacks the prefrontal cortex. Why does it hijacks the prefrontal? What does it mean it's hijacks? It kind of like grabs it. It's kind of like stops it. It says, you can't do anything else. You have to get yourself to safety. Boom, run. It's like, imagine we're sitting in around the circle, around the bonfire, 2 million years ago. And if I would see a tiger coming, and if I would say, Amanda, I think there's a tiger over there. And you would say to me, well, Lola, let's just think about it. We would be eaten, right? We would not be surviving. But now our brain says, there's a tiger in the woods, run. That tells us that we need to get to safety, and that's how we survive. So the same thing with disconnections. When we get disconnected, it's like there's a tiger in the woods. Our brain says, boom, get into safety. And that's why we go into fight, flight, freeze state, because in that moment, we are terrified. It's kind of like existential fear gets in and says, oh my God, I'm gonna die. So if you think about it, if you're disconnected and you respond with a fight, the screen gets bigger, the words get louder, you feeling desperate, you falling through space, you're trying to get everything and anything to get that person's back to you. Well, that response scares them and gets them into the activated mode. So they start to get all stressed about it. So that's how it's kind of like a primitive way of getting to safety, is to fight, run, freeze. But what we know now is we're able to slow things down. We're able to articulate our emotions. And by clarifying these emotions, we start to relax our emotional brain. We start to let the emotional brain let go of the prefrontal cortex and say, it's okay. We are here. We're going to be fine. And that is powerful. That is what's going to help you to create back to positive interactions, is when your ability to slow things down, to recognize that, learn the language of emotions, and to articulate it. By just even articulating the emotions, it helps the amygdala to slow things down and relax. Okay. So often when we are disconnected and the amygdala hijacks our prefrontal cortex, we don't have the words, right? We can't remember. And then afterwards, when we kind of calm down, we say to ourselves, oh, I wish I would say this. Oh, I wish I could say that. That is because, again, it tells you over and over again that your prefrontal cortex is not accessible. So all the people, when you all have communication skills, great, right? You all know how to communicate with each other. But my prefrontal cortex is not working. All of my skills go out the window when I'm disconnected, especially with the people that we depend on. So it's clearly, it's all points us to one direction, is that we need to learn how to regain our balance through understanding emotions. So the negative loop goes in as follows. You get triggered, you get disconnected in that moment, and you do two things. We now know that we do two things to deal with our disconnections. We either fight, like pursue the connection, because we are bonding mammals, we want that connection back. So we fight, we go into the pursuer mode. And the pursuer behaviors are, we complain, why can't you respond to my emails? I've been sending you emails over and over again. Why don't you respond to me? How many times am I going to tell you what I need, right? We complain, we criticize, we judge, we lecture. Only if you can do that, that will be so much easier. You should stop being like this, this way, or you should stop arguing like that with me. That is, all of those behaviors gives you a sense that the person is pursuing the connection. The person is desperately longing for that connection and wants the connection back. So they pursue. The second option, the second kind of a way to deal with disconnection is to withdraw. The withdrawers actually preserve the connection. So this is one of the things I think people don't recognize, is when people stop talking, it's not because they don't want to talk to you. It's because they're afraid to say anything else that might further the disconnection. Just think about it. That concept took me some time to absorb and really put that into action. Like, really? Is that true? The person doesn't want to talk to me, and that's because they care about me? Right, because they care about that connection. They care about the relationship. They care about, oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. And if I say anything else, it might create more disconnection. So the withdrawers, as we call them, they distance, they avoid, they withdraw, they stonewall, right? They get busy with other stuff, but they still long for connection. How many times have I heard withdrawers tell me, yes, it's maybe easier for the moment when I withdraw, but it's so lonely to be there. The same thing with pursuers. I'm so desperately seeking connection. I yell, I scream, I try to get back, I try to pursue them. I somehow say, but somehow they don't hear me. It gets so lonely when I'm disconnected. So both people, no matter what stance they take, whether pursuer or withdrawer, they end up in the same place, feeling isolated and alone. And so what happens is, when you feel isolated and alone, you have low productivity, you can't think, you have conflicts, you're not taking risks because you don't feel safe to take risks. And that leads you to more disconnection. And so what you do, you kind of like wait out, and then when you come back, you have so much anxiety because your amygdala is all stressed. The prefrontal cortex is still hijacked. It's not relaxed. So you can't really engage. You can't collaborate. You don't know how to get back into conversation. You don't feel safe. And then you start to seek connection again by pursuing or withdrawing, and you get back to the same loop again. So it's over and over and over. This can go on forever. I see teams not talking to each other. I don't even know how they work. They said, we find a way to work around each other. And that's very sad. It's very sad that they have to suffer. And people tell me, I go home, I don't even want to come back to work because I feel so disconnected. I can't sleep at night. I have now more physical ailments than I never had before. I don't know why. All of that because we feel alone and isolated at work. Because we can't connect to our peers, to our boss, to the people that matter to us. So it's very, very significant thing to pay attention to when you feel disconnected and learn how to get that connection back, get people back to connection. So The most important, obviously, the important thing is to understand what's happened. So there are 3 different cycles that we see over and over happening. The first cycle is when people pursue and pursue, right? So they're both on the dance floor, they're dancing, but they're dancing to different music. And so they keep bumping to each other. So they're both attacking each other, they're both complaining to each other, criticizing, finding who is the bad guy, whose fault is this? Right, so constantly, that's kind of a pursue cycle. Most often, what we see is pursue withdraw cycle. One pursues, the other withdraws. The more the other withdraws, the more the other pursues. The more one pursues, the more the other withdraws. So they don't have a way to get to stay on the dance floor together. It's like one person is standing on the dance floor, the other person comes to the dance floor, but as soon as they hear the pursuer, boom, they move away from the dance floor. So that is a very common cycle, pursue, withdraw. And the third one we see is withdraw, when 2 people are not on the dance floor. They are not talking to each other, they're avoiding each other, and it's very difficult. So the third cycle, withdraw, is the most difficult to restructure. The easiest one is pursue, because they are on the dance floor. They are engaged. So pursue, withdraw, even though it is often, we can restructure, no problem. It just what we are doing in this process is we're softening the pursuer and we're engaging the withdrawer. We're making it safe for both parties. So how do we do that? Number 1, we give the language for emotions. So pursuers, when they can articulate what is happening for them, when we give a list of emotions with our surface emotions, softer emotions, primary emotions, they suddenly start to feel heard. They suddenly start to feel, wow, somebody is listening to them. Somebody is understanding. I'm understanding myself. Because when we able to organize emotions, clarify emotions, name emotions, we create more organization in our brain. And our brain becomes less chaotic. Our amygdala relaxes. And now we're able to listen to the other person. We are much more softer in our approach. Withdrawers, they get off the dance floor because they don't understand what is happening for them. They get flooded, they get overwhelmed. So when they learn the language of emotions, they start to say, oh, that's correct. I didn't even understand. Wow, is that so many emotions? Wow, I didn't know that I feel that way. By that, that gives them more confidence, more courage, and more safety for them to express what's happening for them. And they can now re-engage and feel safer and also feel heard. So that's a very important recognition. First of all, recognize, and just think about your experience. What do you see in your interactions? Do you see pursue? Do you see pursue, withdraw? Do you see withdraw? Type it in your chat. Think about your interactions, whether it is, work interactions. And maybe you observe somebody that you see happening, a pattern that is happening in your culture, in your environment. Take a moment to think about that. Pursue, withdraw. Very good. Okay, where people who are judgmental and discount other people. So that's a pursuers, right? Their judgment, that's their way to pursue is to judge, saying, hey, come back to me. Pursue, withdraw, okay, attack and blame, then withdraw. Makes sense. That's what we call burned out pursuers. They attack, blame, judge, and then they withdraw. Or the withdrawers could do that too, where they withdraw, and then they attack, and then they withdraw. So we call that like a hit and run. You hit and you run, because they can't stay in the conversation long enough because they get so overwhelmed. So pursue, withdraw, right, very good. Just being aware of what is happening in your interactions, or you observe and what is happening in interactions around you, that is a big step. Just understanding what is happening in how people see connection. So the roadmap to positive interaction is, number one, to teach people about emotions, or to learn about emotions. That's stage one, is to de-escalate the negative cycle, right? To kind of put a cap on the negative cycle so it doesn't continue on. You want to be able to express emotions. You want to be able to understand what is driving, what is the fear. The biggest fear people have is fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, right? That's the biggest fear for us, feeling alone. And rejection and abandonment is we feel alone. We understand what's happening with us in terms of the negative cycle. So in stage one, we constantly reframe the argument, the conflict, the disconnect in terms of the negative cycle, because it is not you who is the bad guy. It's not you who is at fault, or not at fault, but who is the enemy. It's the negative cycle that is the enemy, because what we want to do is we want to place the blame on the negative cycle, not on any individual person, because that creates safety. Nobody wants to be the bad guy. No one. Especially when people work together, especially when they depend on each other. Nobody wants to be the bad guy. So what we constantly do is we constantly reframe, my gosh, you guys are stuck in a terrible negative cycle, right? It's the cycle that created bad relationship for you, right? You're both isolated and alone. You're both seeking connection and you don't know how to reconnect. That creates people much more comfort in saying, hey, you get me, right? You get me. I'm not the bad guy. I don't want to be seen as the bad guy, right? Because that's shame. I want to run if I feel that like I'm a bad guy. But if I know that we are fighting the cycle together, now we're in the same place. Now you get that I care about you. Now you tell me that you care about me. Now you understand how much I struggle, and I can see your struggle as well. So that's a very powerful place. And sometimes it takes a few sessions for people to get to that place where they can learn the emotions. They can understand the raw spots. They understand what triggers them. They're becoming much more aware of it. And that leads them to slow things down, to recognize what's happening to the other person. So everything becomes more aware. You kind of like increase the awareness, you're slowing down the cycle, you create more opportunities for positive interaction to start to seep in. There's hope in the air, there's hope in our relationship. So that creates a lot of calmness for yourself. Stage two, it takes the longest because now you're restructuring the cycle. Emotions are powerful, emotions are fast, and you start to learn how to be what we call emotionally accessible, responsive, and engaged, where you can access what's happening with you in the moment of distress. You can slow it down. You can say, hey, you know, I feel like I'm getting stressed right now. I feel like I'm losing balance, but we all do when we feel and don't know what to do. So I just want to check in with you. I just want to slow it down because I see on your face something is happening. And I see like maybe there's a disappointment or there's a confusion happening. I'm also confused. Can we maybe slow it down to recognize maybe how much we care about this project or how much we care about each other? I remember doing this training and this person calls me like a month later and says, Lola, you know, the reframing about caring about each other, that is powerful. I'm on a committee of audit committee, and there's like 10 of us, and we were on a conference call and people started to talk over each other and started to argue. And I just said, can we just stop for a second? Can we just take a pause? And can we just recognize how much we care about this project all together? How much we care about each other? How much we care about this organization? And then he said, when we came back, people had a different tone of voice. They listened to each other better. What did he just do? He just interrupted the negative cycle. He just brought the awareness back. Hey, let's take a breath. Let's slow the emotions down. We deeply care about each other. We need each other. We want to succeed. And we are here to help each other to succeed. Oh, my amygdala, that's like a lullaby to my amygdala. That's like music to my ears saying, these people care about me. I matter to them. I'm valued. Now I can go and play again, right? So I can be engaged. I can be more empathic to you. I can be more collaborative to you. So restructuring stage 2, it takes a little longer because emotions are fast, and you learn how to work with emotions so you can respond to emotions. Emotional responsiveness is what creates trust. It's what creates secure bonding. It creates connection. Emotional responsiveness. That is hard to do. It takes practice to be emotionally responsive. It means to me, when I see you stressed, when I see you going at me, I can say, I hear you. I hear you, how difficult this is for you. I hear you. I'm right here. I know this is hard. I'm not providing solutions, right? I'm not providing suggestions. I'm here presently. I'm emotionally responsive to you. I remember going to the ATD conference a few years ago, and Oprah Winfrey was the guest speaker, and she said, 3 most powerful words she learned is, I hear you. I hear you. And that's repeating, right? I hear you. Repeating is very important, because if my emotions are right here and they're hijacking my prefrontal cortex, I can't hear you that you're telling me that you hear me. So I have to repeat to you several times, I hear you, right? I hear you. What am I doing? I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. I know how difficult this is for you. I hear you. Now you hear me. That I'm here. I know how desperate you are. I know how painful it is for you in that moment. Hey, hurt feelings happen for us, for adults too, not just for children. Hurt feelings are real for us. And I don't think we pay attention to the hurt feelings and have permission to share our hurt feelings with each other. So the third stage is integrating the emotional connection process into your daily conversation. So what happens? You start to reconnect, you start to repair, you start to create more opportunities for positive interactions happening. Everything starts to kind of click, right? Everything starts to build on each other. And now you see growth and engagement, and people are dancing together to the same music. So quickly, I know, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. It's already 45 minutes. I feel I can talk forever about this. But yeah, stage 1 is creating safety. You will have copies of this, and you'll get more. But here, the surface emotions, you have a lot of other emotions happening, frustrated, annoyed. That's surface emotions. Below the surface, that's more vulnerable emotions, worried, hurt, isolated, alone. Right? Primary emotions, sad, shame, fear, surprise. These are everything that is pushing our connection, is all of these primary emotions, right? So when we feel fear, sad, shame, surprise, boom, our attachment needs get triggered and lack of. Stage 2 is when we restructure the interaction and define safety needs. This is a cute page instead of, are you emotionally responsive? This is kind of like gives you an insight on how to be emotionally responsive. And stage 3 is integration stage. So regaining balance is what the whole thing is about, is how to regain balance, how to bring center to yourself, how to create more opportunities for that emotional regulation, emotional connection, so you can nurture and strengthen your relationships. And that's how you're going to create more and more positive interactions where you can feel secure in your relationships. This is the key. And your interactions do not have to be perfect to stay connected. This is very important. Healthy teams, they fight, they hurt each other's feelings, but they come back They know how to come back and repair that. They know how to be there for each other. Yes, they step on each other's toes, but they know how to reach for each other. That is the difference between cultures where there's a lot of disconnection, conflicts happening, to the one that, yes, conflicts happen sometimes, but they know how to come back with each other. They know how to be emotionally responsive and heal those ruptures, heal those little bit of ruptures. So in the whole process, actually, you become more emotionally intelligent. You know, you've probably seen all Goldman's model, self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship management. All of those components start to evolve and build on it. So you become much more confident in your own stance, in your own leadership, in your own understanding, in your own expression, because you become a lot more aware of what is happening, and you know how to tune to other people so you can get that connection back. So emotional connection is really a road to the better life. That's all I can say. I've been married for almost 41 years next month. I have 5 grandkids, and they all learning all this, and I can see the development that is happening for them, knowing how to tune into that emotional. So benefits is you definitely strengthen your relationships. You definitely create a better sense of yourself. You definitely have more opportunities to engage, to collaborate, to create, and be with each other, and to experience a life that is meaningful to you. That is what we all want, meaningful life. So with that, is the big picture is everything starts with yourself, right? You're here. You're learning about yourself, learning how to be emotionally balanced, emotionally connected, understanding what drives the interactions. You learn how to build relationships. You learn how to create processes, strategies in your companies that will continue to nurture the connection, continue to meet the attachment needs of people. And so you yourself as a leader can also feel connected. So you don't feel alone. That idea that the CEO or leader's job is feeling alone, or it's a lonely job at the top, I don't agree with that personally. I don't agree with that. Because if the leader is connected with his or her team, they are not alone, period. They get off balance, and the other person can be there for them, and the team can be there for them, and they can bring people together. So leader's job is to learn and equip people with emotional connection, because everyone in the company is responsible to create and nurture the relationships. Everyone. It's not just the leader's job. So with that, I think I just want to, The Culture of Connection is my next book that is coming up. It's going to have all these nice bits of emotional connection in a kind of graphical way. I think it's in a playful way. And I want you to know I'm here to answer the questions, and I'm so excited to share that with you. Again, I feel like I can talk forever, and maybe we'll just have a few minutes for questions.
I appreciate how you put the negativity on the cycle and not on the individuals that are involved in either that pursuer or withdrawer position.
Exactly. That was liberating for me personally when I started to look at that, like, oh my gosh, I can see that people are struggling. I started to use that. Oh my gosh, people are struggling. It's not they're being jerk, they're just struggling. Mm-hmm. Wow. And it brought me to center. It brought me to be more empathic. Brene Brown talks about use empathy, well, how do we do that if we're feeling hurt and we're feeling like, oh my gosh, the other person just did it because they want me to hurt? And well, then when we're able to say, wow, this person is really struggling, they're not responding, or they're acting like this, or they're yelling at me, not because they want to yell, because they're struggling. Mm-hmm. Now we have a calm demeanor. Now we are stepping out of the negative cycle. We're not sucked in. And the cycle continues when you get sucked in content. This is also very important. I think I missed that, is that content leads to more conflict. Emotional responsiveness takes you out of negative cycle.
And I appreciate the word that you gave us about pausing, that we need to take some time to slow down, to calm down the portions of our brain, our own emotions. Can you give us within your work maybe some examples or tips of how we can do that as individuals or as leaders, or how we may lead others, children that are in our care, colleagues, subordinates? If you could speak further to that.
Yes. First of all, Vanessa, I'm so impressed. You listen well. You're so good. I love that you're picking up such important points. Yeah, pausing is hard. It's so hard. I'm not going to lie. Any skill I'm going to give you or tips I'm going to give you, it's not going to happen, right? Because emotions are so fast. The only way I have seen people start learning to be good at pausing is to learn the language of emotions, to learn understanding what is triggering with me, what's happening with me. Bodily sensations is the first sign there is something wrong in myself, in my environment. I'm getting triggered. I get like, either my stomach starts to burn. That's actually like shame. If my chest is starting to pound, my heart is like, my chest is getting tight, that's fear. When my neck and my shoulders getting like heavy, I start to have a headache, that's sadness. When I'm able to sense what is happening with my body, I'm able to pause. I'm able to say, wow, I'm feeling scared. And then saying this to myself, and that helps me to just slow it down, to recognize if I'm feeling scared, the other person is feeling scared, because emotions are contagious. We co-regulate each other's emotions all the time. All the time, we can regulate them, we can sense them. In fact, there is a study that says that we can read the other person's facial expression in 100 milliseconds. 100 milliseconds. Just imagine how fast that is. Mm-hmm. And in another 300 milliseconds, we feel what the other person feels. So if I'm feeling scared, there's a highly probability that the other person is feeling scared too. And we can slow it down, we can recognize, we can understand, and we can say, I hear you. I hear you. Just use those three phrases, three words. I hear you. That's really hard.
And not being so quick to have a response. I think that pause is good for us as individuals, but for us as we lead teams and when we interact with one another, we want to so quickly fill the silence. Yes. So if we give each other space, give ourselves space, give those that we're in a conversation with space to reflect, to think of their own emotions, that like Shoshana had put in the chat, the sacred pause. It really is such a sacred tool, and it's a gift that we can give one another.
It is a gift. Yes, it is a gift. Because in that, like when people come to you with problems, they're not really looking for you to solve their problem, right? They're telling you, oh my gosh, I'm reframing it. I'm so overwhelmed. I get so stuck. I'm so worried. I don't know what to do. But in fact, what they're just saying is, I'm alone. I'm scared. I'm so hurt. I feel disconnected. And if you just sit there with them and you say, I hear you. I just want you to know you're not alone. I can see how difficult this is for you. What happens to them? Suddenly, they feel heard, they feel understood, they feel accepted, they feel not alone, and then they sit there for a while and they say, okay, thank you. I'm gonna go and fix my problem myself now. That's empowerment, right? Nobody wants you to fix the problem. It's like we're playing this, like a Rubik's Cube. And I said, like, I can help you to solve this challenge, this puzzle. But people don't want it. They want you to be with them so they can solve it themselves.
Right, to be heard. And I have a question in the chat that I'd like to put forth, or a comment from Beverly of how frustrating it is to try to engage in a conversation with people who are afraid of potential conflict. So it may not be happening in that moment, but it looks like it's down the road. So she would love to hear your opinion, how we might grow and expand our own understanding and the understanding of those that we're working with, that maybe that is why they're withdrawing, because they are fearful of maybe this blow up.
Right, right. So common. Thank you, Beverly. Such a courage to share that experience. And it's very difficult. It's very tough because that leaves you alone. That leaves you kind of hopeless and helpless in that moment and hurt. Absolutely. So the definitely first thing is to understand what is happening with yourself in that moment. You know, when my sister turns away from me, that is what triggering me. That is so hard for me. And here's my raw spots. In the book, we have the list of raw spots, or you can take the class. I have an online master class. You can take the master class to understand, oh my gosh, this is what's happening. Here's my raw spot. I feel rejected. I feel abandoned, right? And here's my surface emotions. Here's my softer emotions. And maybe your sister is not able to even hear that, because that's very overwhelming for them to even understand that you feel rejected. Oh my gosh, the music that plays in the withdrawer's head is that no matter what I do, it's never good enough, right? The music in the pursuer's head plays, I'm always alone. I'm always alone. I need desperate connection. I need to connect with you. I need to know that we're connected, right? So the first thing, I'm a pursuer by nature. Like, I want to talk. My sister is a withdrawer. So I completely get what's happening with you. And it's hard because I have to balance myself. I have to be safe for her to come back and be herself. And then I have to be the co-regulator. Like if she's stressed, or if she's not telling me, or if she's being kind of not responsive or something, I have to still show my love, my care, and maybe I can go to my husband, or I can go to my mom or my daughter, and I can say, you know, I feel so hurt that my sister's not responding, and my husband knows already because he knows this very well. He can say, and I can tell him, I need a hug. I need to know what is happening with me. Or I need you to tell me that she loves me, right? That's the reassurance I need. And he says, she loves you. It's going to be okay. So Beverly, I want to tell you, your sister loves you. She desperately wants to be connected with you. That understanding that your sister wants to be connected with you is golden for you. And it's in our bones. We want to be connected. You can't get this off. You can't prove it otherwise. This is a fact. This is what's working with me and for me when I work with any team that is disconnected and having conflict. I know they want to be connected together, even though they say, I don't want to see that person. I don't want to work with that person. It's not true. It's in that moment. They don't want to work with that person in a negative cycle. That's true. But when they can create safety for each other, they will be able, they want that. They want to be safe.
We have one final question. If you know of any research or input behind the functionality of the working relationship with two women as opposed to a man and a woman, is one more successful than the other, or one that finds resolution easier than the other?
You know, it's very interesting. I've seen and I've read research saying that when most of the time males are withdrawers, you know, and most of the time females are pursuers. And I don't think it's because they're just like born like that. I think it's because they don't have enough exercise, like practice of expressing themselves, of recognizing what is happening with them. So, but women, when they are withdrawers and pursuers, both pursuers and withdrawers, women who are withdrawers are a lot harder to get them back to the engagement. It just takes a long time because their hurt is so deep. And it takes a lot of safety, love, and care, dedication, patience to tell them, you're okay. I accept you just the way you are. You're not broken. My husband's favorite part, he has this Instagram. He's also a couples therapist. He has, you're not broke. You're not broken. You don't need to be fixed. right? That is so hard for people to believe. So I think if you can give them that music, I love you, right? It's so hard, right? Because we are off balance, we falling through space, we need that, we need that love too. But also understanding it's so hard. So I think both pursuers and withdrawers just suffering a lot. And when they can learn this process and learn the emotional connection, they're in a much better place, much better place. I want you to know there is hope.
Thank you, Lola, and thank each of you for being with us today. And
Thank you.
this is such important work. So thank you all again.
Thank you.
Have a blessed week and a wonderful weekend. We'll see you next time.